What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to the bench for another episode of our Rivals and Adversaries group build. Yes, we are back on the Sabre. Been a little bit of time, guys. We had our 12 Sprues holiday build series going on, lots of stuff with the holidays, but we are back on the bench and we're going to get back into the Sabre. Joe's building the MiG-15 by Trumpeter. I'm building the Sabre by Academy. As you can see, we've got the cockpit inside the fuselage. Fuselage is tucked together, all nicely sealed up. We do have some panels we need to go ahead and put back in there, some inserts and whatnot. We have a step here or two around the nose and around the rear tail section, so that all has to be done, but so far we're moving right along. Now, as I mentioned last episode, this is a bit of a tail dragger. We do have to go ahead and put some form of weight there into the nose. Now, I have these little 0.25 gram weights that have a self-adhesive backing. We're going to actually try to slip one right in here between the fuselage and that engine. If I can get one in there, that should be enough to kind of hopefully kick it forward. If it's not, I can go ahead and dump a bunch of BBs in there as well, which should also counterbalance and keep this thing sitting on its tricycle landing gears. It's too bad I can't use both of them, but there's just not enough room in there. Then I have to go ahead and sand a little bit on the fuselage, take care of some of these seams. Rear tail cone is a little bit of a mess, so we want to go ahead and seal that up and ferret it in, get the wings going, start doing some filling, get those nose weights in there, and we were back in action and moving on. Let's go ahead and jump in here to our first time lapse. Let's start having some fun. Get back on that Sabre. All right, everybody, we are back, and so far so good. The wings went together decently, but I did notice we have a gap right there at the right side of the wing root. We need to go ahead and fill that with something, and I figure why not use some styrene. The left side is absolutely fine, but the right side has a gap that's about 0.25 millimeters thick. So we luckily have a piece of styrene we can go ahead and just drop right in there, and I think we'll be on the right track. Once I get that in there, though, I should be able to hopefully not have to come back and fill anything, but even if I do, at least I'll have something I can kind of shore up my filler. Should be pretty easy to do. First things first, we're just going to glue in a little strip of this 0.25 millimeter styrene. We're going to glue it right to the inside of the wing. Like I said, it's 0.25 millimeters thick, and that just seems to fit right into place. That's not too bad. A little bit of extra thin Tamiya, and we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of pressure here, make sure it's not going to go anywhere. And once that is dry, we can come back and trim it to fit. Also in the back tail cone, we can do something very similar. We have a little strip of styrene. I want to go ahead and get it contoured right here between the tail cone and the engine to fill up any sort of gap in there. And I think this is going to work just fine. I'm going to trim up the size a little bit, and it's also slightly curved, so I'm going to go ahead and press it against my pin vise handle, roll it around a little bit, and kind of get it in a nice curved shape before I install it. It's going to save me a little bit of time. Once that is good, we can go ahead and just slip it right on in there, drop some glue, fix that so it's not going to go anywhere, and then pour in some super glue just to make sure that we can come back later and fair it all together. So that should be pretty cool. We can trim it up later too with the X-Acto knife. Shouldn't be any harder than that. Now back onto the wing, let's go ahead and take our scissors and just trim off the excess styrene. We're not going to take it right to the aircraft wing though. We're going to actually come back in and we're going to take it incrementally down. So first the scissors, now we're going to come in with our flesh cuts and trim off a little bit more. And after that is done, we can come back in with our hobby knife and just start cleaning up some of the areas. I'm going to take very small passes, little sections here and there to make sure I don't dig in too deeply, and I end up cutting into the wing plastic. I don't want to do that. I want this to be a nice, easy to build model. I don't want to have to do a bunch of filling if I don't have to. If it's a little rough, that's okay. We can take our jeweler files, come in there and just contour it down, make sure that it's nice and level with the wing itself so that it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb. I want this to be as hidden as possible, and I don't want to have to backfill this with a bunch of putty because putty can shrink. Super glue we have to sand down, so this way we have at least a filler backing in there that we can use. As you can see, it looks a lot better than having a big gap there, and anything extra, a little bit of Mr. Surfacer, will actually get that wrapped up into place, no problem. So while that dries, we're going to come back in and I want to go ahead and start adding in our nose weight. I've got one of my nose weights in there and I've got the self-adhesive backing off. It's as far as it can go, but it's not enough weight. So I need to go ahead and add in a little bit more. And like I mentioned, we're going to add in some BBs. Now I'm not really sure how much I'm actually putting in here. We're going to just throw these BBs in here, feel it out here, see how much I can fit in there and make sure that it's not too heavy, just heavy enough to keep that nose down. Now sometimes I'd use super glue to go ahead and affix these inside, but this time I'm not going to do that. This time I'm going to use some Elmer's school glue. The reason for that is my extra thin super glue tends to just kind of go everywhere. So instead, I'm going to use a little bit of thicker Elmer's school glue. We're going to dump the BBs down inside of that, kind of shake it around a bit, stir it up if I need to, let that sit for a little bit of time so they can go ahead and cure up. So let's go ahead and jump into our next time lapse. I want to go ahead and start working on the wings, sand those down, fill up any gaps I can. I have noticed a very large seam in the canopy, so let's go ahead and tackle that as well, polish that out, scratch building there for some details on the windscreen and just see where we can go from there. Let's push on and keep it going. All right, everybody, so as you can see, the fuselage is together. We are done for today. I've also built up that little section that sits right behind the canopy. So far, so good. It's not the best parts I've ever put together, but they're okay, and they're going to work just fine. We've got some plastic, we've got some PE, we've got everything kind of dialed in as best as we can get it. So eventually we'll just go ahead and paint it and come in with some of our wires and kind of make it look a little bit better. But so far, it's not a bad place to start. Go somewhere here on the rear decking. We also had an opportunity to fix up the drop tanks to get the wing nicely sanded down. The drop tanks are actually pretty decent, but we do have to come in with our jeweler files and kind of trim off some of the areas around the perimeter. Just kind of come in and take some of that edge down. Once that is cleaned up and we're sanded down, we can then put in our photo etched fins. They do fit. I did a little bit of dry testing there, but unfortunately, I don't want to put them in just yet. I do need to sand this down, and I feel like if I had photo etched fins in there, I might mangle them up or dent them or something, and I don't want to do that. So we're going to leave those off for right now. Next time we'll come on back and eventually we'll get those installed. Also, of course, as you saw, I did add in a little bit of styrene right here on the right side of the wing. Now there was a gap about 0.25 millimeters thick. I think styrene is a really good choice for that because it's not going to take much effort to go ahead and sand it down. I might come back in and put a little bit of Mr. Surfacer just to go ahead and make sure you don't see it. But if you'll notice, that looks a lot better than having a giant gap all along that wing. Also, the wings look great. The dihedral is pretty much spot on, at least as far as I can tell. So I'm actually very, very happy with how this is turning out. Just a little bit of time, a little bit of patience, and I think we're going to have a much easier time when we go ahead and start getting this thing ready for paint. A little bit of a close-up here. As you can see, I did add in some scratch-built details here on the very front of the windscreen. Pretty much just some wires and whatnot. I used a lot of the kit parts, and I added in some PE parts as well. So far, so good. I think it looks pretty cool. We're going to have to go ahead and, of course, paint that up when I get around to it. But I think the little bit of wires here and there add some interest and add some life to the area. And then while I'm here, I might as well show you a close-up here of our rear decking. I did use a combination of photo etch and plastic parts. We do need to add in some wires and some other little details here and there, but this is actually a really good place to start, so I'm happy with it. And lastly, guys, if you recall, I went ahead and did some work there on the canopy. Now I noticed that there was a seam that ran from the front to the back of the canopy right down the center, and I didn't like how that looked. I couldn't find any reference that says that was supposed to be there, so instead I just kind of jumped at it and I removed it. The way I did that, as you saw in the video, is I actually used a couple of different sanding sticks. For the final polish, I used this superfine sanding stick by Squadron, and then I used this just random nail buffer that I was given that actually works pretty well. I removed that seam completely, then I went ahead and polished it out with a little bit of plastic scratch remover, and we are good to go. Dipped it in the future, and I think it's going to look a lot better. But that is it, guys. We are done for episode number 5. It is so nice to be back on the Sabre. We've got a lot of work left to do, but so far this kit has been a really, really fun model to work on. Got the weight in there, so it's not going to sit on his tail. At least I don't think it will. So until our next episode, you guys know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool. Make sure to go check out Joe's channel. I know he's back on the MiG, so go show him some love. And we'll see you back here on episode number 6, the Rivals and Adversaries buddy build and the F-86 Sabre. Thanks so much for watching, guys. It's great to be back, and we'll see you soon.